Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Precision Optics. Omer and his team are the ones to trust when it comes to mountain hunting gear, guns, and optics. Precision Optics is a major supporter of conservation, and we are proud to partner with them. Head over to precisionoptics.net and tell them that Spike Camp sent you.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the camp chat for tonight. This is part 2 of our predator hunting series. If you watch hunting on YouTube at all, then you most likely know tonight's guest, Tom Schneider. Tom and his siblings and brother-in-law have a very cool brand and YouTube channel called Stuck in the Rut. Tom, welcome to Spike Camp.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's a very fun topic. I love talking about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Why don't you give our listeners sort of a quick overview bio on yourself and the Stuck in the Rut crew? Tell us a bit about what you guys are up to.
Yeah, so I guess the best way to start off is just explaining that, I grew up in the mountains. You could say that I lived a very fortunate life. I felt like I consider it like a rich life, but not rich in money, but more rich in experience, in the sense, lived in the outdoors. I grew up next to 3 different mountain ranges, and the access to the mountains was really simple for me. Even as a high school student, when I got to the age to hunt, it was nothing for me to just jump in my pickup and archery elk hunt or chase muleys around. In fact, there was even times where my brother and I would just, moose hunting locally here. It's a drawing for moose, but we just have fun calling them. So sometimes we just jump in the mountains right after school and call in moose. And I just remember one day we called in, it was just nonstop action, just calling in moose after moose after moose. And then, of course, I did bring that up to you a little bit. We shed hunting too. So I definitely felt like, that was our upbringing. My dad is a logger, so we grew up in a logging family. And we just were taught to work hard. And I think the biggest thing my dad painted a picture in all of my siblings is the harder you work, the more you can play. And so that's been my mentality. That's, if you see all my siblings on our YouTube channel, we're all like that. We all have our day jobs, and then we just do everything in our power to make enough money for the year to enjoy the fall and to hunt hard, and we see the reward of it too. So I guess that's probably the more simple way to explain my background and what we do.
Yeah, right on. And I think if anyone's watched your videos, you certainly pick up on the fact that you guys do that. You bust your ass, you go deeper, farther, hunt harder, all the key things that the killers do to kill, right?
Yeah.
I've been following you guys on YouTube for a long time. And every once in a while you see your dad on there. Does he get on the videos much at all?
We want more of him. He's the character, but he's not into that social media. But anytime I've introduced him to people and stuff, people just love talking to him. He kind of has that old timer mentality, and you talk to him, he's he just has so much information. And he grew up in the best times, being one of the very few archery hunters that really got into archery hunting. And, and he has the stories of when elk hunting started, where everybody started with this pipe tube to start bugling. Even before that, he said he archery hunted, nobody ever even thought of bugling an elk. They just walked in the elk, So, he's got a really good background there. And then along with that, he has some friends that they had a couple decades. They were a little bit older than my dad, and they were kind of mentors to him. And so I felt like he gained a lot of knowledge from them, and then he passed it down to us. And so we just grabbed right onto it, and definitely really, I really appreciate everything he's done for us. And he's the type of guy too, where, when I was a kid, he'd let a big buck and a big bull walk away. Although he had a tag too, he could have killed it, but he would, just for the learning experience, which was hard. I don't know how he did it, but he'd rather see us kill it than him. And, so many times, even me as a kid, I knew it was foolish for a buck to get away. I'm like, Dad, I can't get it. You shoot it. And he's like, no, you shoot it. And I just knew I couldn't make, you know what I mean? So he made us learn the hard way, and I'm glad he did. And, because that's pretty much how we all turned out. So,
Yeah, I mean it.
yeah.
I got 3 kids that all hunt, Blake obviously, and then 2 others. And some of my best memories of all of our hunts have been when I've done the same thing. You shoot it, and the kids were always pushing me. It's like, Dad, you shoot him, and I've shot enough. You guys do it. You get so much more reward out of it. Well, that's pretty cool. So as far as Stuck in the Rut goes, how many, like, are all your brothers? I know your sister Tana is up in Alaska. So are all of you guys involved in this thing?
Yeah, so all the family members, and we all have like I said, we all have our day jobs. We all have our different roles in Stuck in a Rut. Some of us put in more time than others, and that's fine. We don't really have much obligations besides the fact if there is any gain in it, that those who put in more time gets more reward. But everyone in the family is included. And I'll give a prime example. So my little brother Trevor, he's a hardcore hunter, but he got into real estate. He got into real estate, and he took a lot of time off his hands to be able to. He had to skip a lot of hunting seasons, unfortunately. But and then it was after about 4 or 5 years, and he was able to establish himself. He got back into hunting pretty heavily, and in fact, he archered 2 bull elk this year, on video. And so, so there's times, I think, in all of our lives where it could be the fact maybe I broke a foot, and then I'm out of luck. I'm not hunting for part of the hunting season, or vice versa. There's always somebody holding it afloat, which is a good thing. For the most part, I myself personally have done. I've kept the YouTube channel going and pretty much all the social media of Stuck in a Rut, and what I think is really neat is that my brother-in-law, my sister, they kind of, although they're part of Stuck in a Rut, they've also picked up their own following too. Just
for sure,
with their unique Alaskan adventures, and just living out in the bush. It's just a different lifestyle. So it's cool to consider them, like their family. My sister's up there, my brother-in-law, and it's funny how people are like, "Do you know Tana and Adam?" Like, yeah,
I've met them once or twice.
Yeah. We're like, "How did you come to meet them?" I'm like, that's my sister. I had to share a bedroom with her, unfortunately, for the first 10 years of my life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they do, for sure. They've got a following. I mean, Adam is, if anybody who doesn't follow Adam, you should check him out. I mean, he's a character. And
yes.
I mean, those 2 are killers. I mean, your sister is just an absolute killer herself. I mean, it's fun to watch, just the whole program you guys have going on there is pretty awesome. It must be interesting, to try to map out. I'm going to ask you, do you guys have sort of a master plan every year when you're trying to figure out how the content's going to look for the year? Like, do you try to come up with some sort of a formula? I guess it all depends on tag drawings and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, and I try to be the nicer guy, but so I'm the guy who edits the videos, and so I think what's tough for me as an editor, when you get a bunch of raw footage, and so of course I have a lot of opinions, and like, okay, we can do this better, so we do definitely, we have that meeting every single winter. But yeah, we know we typically do have a game plan and see what we can do to grow and make this better. Um, it it's but the one thing I think is really unique with our family compared to others is that the way that we can get along. Um, and I don't know how that is. Us as siblings always spend a lot of time with each other. My dad, not to say we don't fight. Absolutely, we're siblings, right? We have our
Yeah,
fights,
for
but
sure.
we get along really well, and we can hunt together like we're best friends. I consider my older brother Travis like my best friend, and because he still lives in Idaho, close to where I live, and so we spend a lot of time hunting together. Um, and then sometimes I'll go to Alaska and hunt with Adam and Tana, which I did this year on a brown bear. I killed a brown bear up there, and vice versa. They'll come down here and
Hmm.
but I just think that's really unique and I didn't really think it was unique until I've seen other siblings are like, you hunt with your brothers? How do you get along? It's like, we just do. And if you fight, you just move on, like we just don't hold grudges toward each other. And like I said, you'll have a tussle here and there. And I'm just talking about we're not throwing fists, but sometimes you can have your arguments or something. But you
Right.
grew up together, you learn how to deal with each other. It's not a big deal. And um, when you share a tent together for a long period of time, you better learn to like each other. 'Cause
Yeah,
you're in a tent for
exactly.
a long time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the benefits to hunting with a sibling or a family member, like for example, Blake's my main hunting partner. The other two hunt when they can, but they don't live close by and they're busy with careers. So the one thing you do for sure know is your partner's limitations and boundaries, right? As a sibling or a family member. So when you're getting close to those boundaries, you're not surprised by anything, which is nice, right? You know exactly what you're getting with the partner.
Yeah. And then like and adding to that too, I think the most unique thing is when we are elk hunting, let's say we got a bull bugling, my brother and I hardly have to even say anything to each other. We know each other's next move, and so we're in sync. We know what to do. We've hunted with each other for so long. And I think it also helps too, just growing up in the killer mentality. It's really hard to find a hunting partner that has our type of mentality when we go out on a hunt. Some people, and I'm trying to say this in the nice way possible. Um, we, we don't go as a vacation on a hunt. It's a mission, like we enjoy the hunt, but I'm not going to deny the fact I'm not the type of guy that takes a picture of the scenery and say, oh, although I didn't kill an elk, it was beautiful. I'm the type of guy, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little disappointed if I come home empty handed. I'll stick it out until the very end. The one thing I will,
Yeah.
though, is I won't feel guilty if, like, let's say I pass up a young bull elk in pursuit of a big bull, and then the season ends. I know that I did everything I could do, and I have to come to terms with that. But I'm the type of guy, I get it in my head, and I'm I'm stubborn that way. I think our whole family is. We're all stubborn, and if we got an animal in our mind that we want to kill, we'll stay there to the very bitter end. So, um, but
Yeah, that's a good
we
attitude.
work good as a team. We work really good as a team.
Well, that's awesome. Well, just a couple more things on stuck in the rut before we dive in. Can you tell us a little bit about the evolution from like the early YouTube days to present day? You guys got a lot going on. I mean, if you look at what you're doing with your obviously with the filming, and then you personally and your brother with your master classes and your camps, the social media presence. You look at what Adam and Tanner are doing up in Alaska. I mean, that's quite an evolution, right? Like, how long you guys been doing this?
Close to a decade, I'd say. I did look it up. Sometimes I forget when we started. I think it said, I think our YouTube channel started in 2012 or 2013. And we made a really smart move with it because at the time, when we first started Stuck in a Rut, we were selling DVDs. And I kept on seeing YouTube and I just wasn't seeing many hunting videos. And I started, and this was, I worked in North Dakota for a time, working in the oil field. And you think it's hard work, but the type of job I had was actually the opposite, where I was more of a monitor, and I just had to be out in the field, but I had a lot of time to learn about new things. And that was the time where I had hours upon hours of just, when I'm not working and I'm away from home, I have nothing else to do besides learn. And I learned everything I needed to know about YouTube and how to make it grow. And so I got my brother, although Travis originally started Stuck in a Rut, it was my idea to start the YouTube channel and to get that going. And so I've been in charge of that ever since. And we kind of got a really good foundation, right from the get-go, and started building their channel. And, it wasn't until, and then let's see, I'm trying to think, it was about 2018, we just started making exponential growth. I mean, people started knowing about Stuck in a Rut and stuff like that, but 2018, we just exploded on YouTube, which is really cool. And obviously a lot of it was based on predators too. The one thing I thought was rather interesting is you'd have all these videos, but most people, when they'd come up to me, they knew me from my predator videos and the wolf hunting I do. That's what I came up to. And even, originally we even tried the sportsman channel stuff too. Nobody came up and said, "Hey, we saw you on TV." It was, "You're that wolf guy on YouTube." That's kind of what I kept on getting. "You're the wolf guy on YouTube." Because when they opened the first season ever in Idaho, I was I want to say the very first, but at least one of the very first to shoot a wolf on video. Like first year, I got a wolf on video and I posted it on YouTube. And that was a really good foundation for us just right then and there too, just because it was such a hot topic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hot button item. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, you guys are what? You got to be in the close to 30,000 followers now, right? Somewhere in that range on YouTube. Like it's
on YouTube, we're
high
250,000.
Oh, wow. Or maybe I'm thinking something else. That's insane,
but
man.
It could have been our Instagram is about 50. Our Instagram's 50.
Okay.
Our TikTok is TikTok, I do it as a joke, but we're still over 200,000 followers on TikTok, which is hilarious.
Man.
And then what I was looking at today, we're 243,000 on our YouTube channel, and I was thinking it was like 90 million views combined with our videos. So
wow, congratulations. Those are awesome numbers, man.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, again, and that's probably why I reached out to you, honestly, is, is when I started talking to Blake about potential guests for this series, your name jumped up first and foremost. I said, well, I gotta reach out. I mean, this guy teaches people how to hunt wolves. So, the idea for us behind these species specific series and camps, it's really to get experts or people with a lot of experience in whatever it is we're focused on the live streams, just to talk more or less about the tactics and strategies and all those things related to whatever it is we're after. And in this case, it's wolves. So for us, and when you and I spoke on the phone, we talked a little bit about the the differences as far as hunting rules and regulations go between the Canadian side of the border versus your guys' side over in Idaho. And for us here, at least in British Columbia, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in Alberta, trapping is managed by licensed trappers with designated trap lines. So the average hunter, like Blake and I, or the guys that are on tonight, the real only method for us, unless we're on our own property, is to just to hunt them traditionally by calling or spot and stalk or tracking and so on. So that's kind of what we wanted to dig into tonight a little bit with you and pick your brain on. So maybe you could start by telling us how you guys got into wolf hunting, you in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'll go back and I'll just briefly mention, like I said, when I was young, I just felt like I lived the heyday, like where we had a lot of elk, a lot of moose. I just remember drainages where you'd have, you find a microsite. Well, and these microsites are big, right? Like 30 head of elk in a drainage, 2 to 3 bulls, and then you hop into the next drainage and there's another group of elk, and about every drainage had a herd of some sort. And if you're just a good hiker, you're going to be in action. That was how it used to be. Like if you can get a little ways away from the foot traffic, you're going to be an elk. And that's kind of why we got into horses and mules too, is we'd pack in and really get away from people. And man, we would just have action like you wouldn't believe. Beagle and elk. It was literally like a 5-year span where it's like every time we packed in with our horses and mules, we came home with dead animals every time. Like we actually did not have a dry run for 5 years. It was pretty awesome.
Wow.
And
right on.
But what started happening is, as soon as the wolves, when they were introduced in Idaho, it was, late 1990s, but they didn't really move into our area of Idaho until we started seeing tracks and seeing them it was like 2007 was when I saw my first wolf, and started seeing my first wolf tracks when I go shed hunting in the springtime. And we just started immediately seeing just a very unusual impact that it made in our area. And I just wish people would listen sometimes, because we would just witness like destruction like you wouldn't believe. Like it's nothing I'd ever see on what a mountain lion would do, or a bear. I mean, I've found plenty of mountain lion kills. I've found plenty of kills by grizzlies, but you will never see anything like what a wolf can do, especially in a wintering range with elk and moose. And these areas, like, me being a shed hunter, you wouldn't believe how quickly a wolf pack would wipe out a moose in an area. Like very short amount of time. Like there was one area where we had, I think it was close to, and I'm just trying to run, I'm not trying to be unrealistic with my numbers, but there was close to 20 bull moose alone wintering on this clear cut, and they did every single year, where they just pulled down on the mountain at a certain elevation, they'd shed there. And there's a few clear cuts, but the browse was just perfect for them. It was just the perfect habitat. Wolfpack moved in. It was about a 3-year span, and it went from 20 to 2. And it was just so unfortunate because it started from finding sheds to deadheads. Same thing with our elk. We'd have groups, the cows and the elk, same thing. They're kind of separated. Like the bulls will bachelor up and live in these certain wintering ranges, and we keep tabs on them. I glass them up and everything, and Wolfpack would move in, and it was just almost a night and day difference. The herd was nearly cut in half the first year, and then just kept on getting cut in half afterwards. And it was like the wolves wouldn't leave them alone either. Like, people are saying, oh, like, they'll leave for a period of time, and that wasn't happening. Like they were just, when a wolf pack found a vulnerable herd, they would just keep hammering them. And when you got a bad winter, they're screwed. They have nowhere else to go. And so we would just watch this destruction happen over and over and over again. And, just like anybody else, we'd hear hunters complain about it. We'd complain about it. But nobody was making a difference, right? And of course they were on the endangered species list, and so again we couldn't do anything about it. But in 2011, when they first opened up the season, I felt like this was a chance for me to finally do something about it rather than complaining, right? I'm like, I'm tired of complaining about this issue. I'm finally ready to do something. And so now that time, so my sister, she never, all the siblings were single. We weren't married to anybody. So Tana was still in college. I was still in college. So she came up for a break from college. And I was like, Tana, let's try going wolf hunting. And first day I ever went out, I called in 2 wolves and killed the gray one and wounded a big black one. It still hurts me because it was beautiful.
Wow.
I'm like, no. But he got away from me. And but I just, man, wolf hunting was a piece of cake, man. I tell you what, it made it seem so simple. I was like, just called him in like, this is easy. So that first gray wolf, it was a beautiful coat, and I sold it. I was like, yeah, I'll get more. And it wasn't until about 5, and then I started going out, and I was having failure after failure after failure. And it was just like, the wolves wised up so quick out of that pack. After that one scenario, they would not come in again. So after I shot that wolf, went the next day, we were calling in another wolf out of that same pack. This is 2011. And my sister set up and she's ready to shoot. And this wolf is howling, getting closer and closer and closer. It's just like a bull elk, you know, and he's fired up. And
Mm-hmm.
my sister was like scared because she knew it was going to be a point blank shot. Heard that alpha male way out behind where that young one was coming in, and he turned around and left. That alpha male immediately knew that the same sounds that we were using were dangerous. It's a hazard. And so he wised up immediately. We spent 2 weeks on that pack, getting him howling every single day, chasing him in the woods every single day, and just couldn't get another shot. And then from there, I felt like what happened is I was trying to do my part, but then I started getting burnt out again. I was just like, gosh, I'm just not making any headway. So I just continued to just do what I normally do and hunt, but I kept on hitting this wall of dead zones where I'd have a spot where I'm like, okay, we're in another elk pocket. Let's focus on hunting this elk herd. Wolf pack would move in, completely annihilate the area. So we're like, well, we're out of elk here. We move into a different area, find elk again. And it was this nasty dominoes effect. And, then I'm starting to get back into like, we got to figure this out. We got to figure this out. You know what I mean? So, and it was just quite the learning curve.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a frustrating process, right? Especially when you have success early, you think you got to figure it out, but that just speaks to how smart these things are, right? I mean, they figured you out as fast as you figured that first one out, and then it was a game changer. We see that same pattern in BC. I've experienced it a little bit firsthand. We have a property 5 hours north of Vancouver, and a few years back, you go sledding in the winter and you see moose everywhere. They follow especially in the snowmobile trails, they love those trails, and we're the guys making them, so we're causing the problem too. But they would browse all along the side of the trails, and then you start seeing wolf tracks, and then all of a sudden a big pack moved in, and in one winter, just killed. There's moose kills everywhere. You'd see moose kills on the trail more than you'd see anything else. And now it's a few years, 2 or 3 years later. Last year I didn't see any tracks at all, any wolf tracks, and now we've started to see some more moose come back. So nature does have a way of coming back, but I guess in the case of like elk herds like that, there's a lot more elk in a herd rather than a herd of moose, and it doesn't take more than a month or so, I would imagine, and the wolves would just chew that whole herd right down to nothing, right?
Yeah, well, it just depends on the winters too, right? So like you
Sure.
get areas where I guess, you could be in Alaska or even in Canada where they can move a little bit more country. I feel like with at least in our neck of the woods, and I can't speak for all ecosystems, right? Because every terrain's different.
It's different, yeah.
It's different, but our area, we live in a very mountainous terrain. And so when the animals pull down to an elevation, they're isolated there. They can't move out of there. They can't go back up. They go back up and they're 8 foot, 10 foot deep of snow. They can't go. Like they're stuck in their wintering range, and they're vulnerable to predation. And so they can't move. And my brother-in-law and sister, they hunt wolves in Alaska quite a bit. And so and they can hammer those moose out too. However, being that they live in kind of in a flatter spot of Alaska, those moose can bounce around a little bit, right? Like they get some wolf pressure. The moose can at least move around a little bit. Unlike here where they're kind of isolated. And but I've also have seen that too, what you're saying, where I'm seeing a rebound in certain areas where I'd say back in 2014 you couldn't find a moose track or an elk track. And now I'm seeing very young, a very young generation coming back, which is great. Got to start somewhere. Just like I was saying, it was just shed hunting, picked up 2 moose paddles, and somebody beat me in there. So I'm pretty sure they found more in there. But this was an area where I promise you couldn't even find a moose track in the winter, like close to a decade ago. And now we have moose in there. But the trappers are to thank in that area. They hammered them hard. And it's just the wolves, again, they wised up so well to where they just know not to run in there. It's not safe for them. And
Hmm.
one thing I've learned with wolves is they put safety to a priority in their lives. Like I've seen it happen multiple times, and we can work that to our benefit. And I've noticed that personally, being a wolf hunter myself. I've seen the habits change with wolves, but also with our ungulates.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely adaptable, right? For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you're getting into wolf hunting, it's something new as a hunter. Where do you start with gear? Like, what do you need to be a wolf hunter?
So I know in Canada, so it's hard because I know you guys' rules are different than mine, and so I try the best I can to keep up. And I know you guys can't use suppressors, but I
Right.
would use, like, you need a caliber, obviously, powerful enough to knock down a wolf, but the more quiet the better. And I'll tell you where I learned this at, and it actually started. It was there. No, I don't think I told you this story, but anyways. This was going back in time when I was trying to learn wolves. I was kind of like, gosh, I'm just trying to keep up, trying to find elk. And I went 18 days without getting an elk bugle. And I was hiking in this area. Um, and I'm trying to think, it was a few years after like I said, I kind of surrendered. I kind of gave up on the wolf hunting. I just wasn't figuring it out. And I was hiking in the woods. I had a bow in hand, trying to archery a bull elk, and I can smell elks. I can smell the elk, and I'm like, this is a pocket that usually I can find a big old bull. Usually, it's just an area where you can get away from people. But I'm like, why aren't they talking? It's toward the end of September. They should just be screaming right now. Herd of cows, and that's one thing I've noticed with wolves too, is just like the way animals behave. Elk will just get quiet, during the archery season, during the rut,
For sure.
when
Yeah.
wolves are around. They just, every time they bugle or cow call, they get chased. So they're just like, they go quiet. Um, and I'll typically call some silent bulls too, just like they'll come in quiet in that scenario. But anyways, I was walking in there and I was just like, I felt like something wasn't right. And I was moving in the thick brush, doing a couple chirps, cow chirps, just keeping my sound down because I was breaking through branches. And, I had this feeling like something was kind of staring at me, and I looked to my left and I had a wolf trotting in at me. And so all I can think to do was knock an arrow. So I knocked an arrow and I pulled back my bow, and this wolf is probably, I mean, not that far away, less than 10 yards, and I
Oh,
just put it right under the chin, just right here, right in the chest. And he took off as fast as he could, but he only made it about 2 leaps and tipped over, just lost consciousness really quick. And I was just like, holy smokes, I can't believe that just happened. And
sure.
then,
Yeah. Crazy.
and as that happened, the rest of the pack came out and was sniffing that wolf. I was like, I have a chance again. So I knocked another arrow, pulled back. And at this point, all I see is the neck of a wolf. Like, I know, like, my shooting lanes aren't great here. And I wouldn't normally take that on an elk, neither a deer, but I'm like, it's a wolf. I mean, just, all right, I see
Got to
hair,
try.
just get him. And I shot, and lo and behold, I spined him in the neck, and he tipped over right on top of the other one. But he made a little bit of a yelp, and so it split the pack up, but they were still really confused. One ran to the right, the other one ran to the left. I couldn't see the one on the right anymore, but I could see the one on the left. I pull again, I knock another arrow. I pull back, and I'm like, I don't normally shoot through brush. We all know what an arrow does shooting through brush, but it's a
Sure.
wolf, right?
Hmm.
It's a wolf. And so I shoot, and I center mass that wolf, and it yelps and it starts running kind of toward me, and it just runs right past me, and it tips over a couple times, kind of loses unconsciousness, and then disappears in the alders. I look back in that experience right there, and I realized that, being that bow was so quiet, that's why they stood around. Because after that scenario, I got back into wanting to learn how to hunt these wolves again. And I started figuring it out, and we started seeing success again. And not just a little bit of success, we started seeing consistency. We were coming home with dead wolves and
Right.
started figuring out the trick of the trade. And but the one thing that I was dealing with when we're going back to equipment is I was shooting a big muzzle brake, and when a wolf pack would come in, I'd shoot one, they'd scatter, they'd run off. But so many times when they come in, they're so relaxed, and they're not. Their first instinct's not to run away. Like, especially wolves that haven't been hunted before. If you can find a wolf pack that hasn't had any hunting pressure, they come in very calm, almost wagging their tails like a dog. But as soon as you start putting pressure on them, they wise up, and it's almost nearly impossible to call them in again. So you kind of, so what I really had to figure out, for one, the right equipment, having the right gun. So we can use suppressors here. And so I got that. I got a suppressor, and literally, so in the US, it takes about a year to get, like, after you go through the process, fingerprinting and everything, it takes about a year to get approved. But then after that, you can buy as many as you want. So anyways, as soon as I got approved to get one, I went the following week, and I dropped 4 wolves on top of each other, stacked them right on top. And I was like, that is the ticket right there. That's, just because it reminded me of that time back when I had a bow.
Sure.
When they were unalarmed. Like I said, unlike a deer and elk, they're always on the alert, right? Even when there's no danger around, they're always picking their head up. They're always looking around. Like, they know they're at the bottom of the food chain. A wolf knows he's on top. Like, he's not afraid unless he's experienced hunting pressure before. Otherwise, before we've ever had a hunting season, our experiences with wolves are a little actually hair-raising, because we would have them come up really close, walk up, and not like run away. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so, I mean, they would even show forms of aggression too, and so it made a lot of people uneasy. And
Right.
They are an apex predator of the woods. We are the only predator for them, and the only other predator besides us is themselves.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, obviously, suppressors are not the answer. So for most wolf hunters, our hunting scenarios and calling scenarios are probably going to be one shot, maybe 2 max. If they're in an opening or something.
Right.
So
Can you guys? I'm assuming you guys can use muzzle brakes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say, though, is to avoid the muzzle brake. Try something. I mean, like I said, I usually like a bigger caliber. Just, I like to knock down wolves. But I've had friends that use like a 7 Psalm or 6.5. Again, I'm not like, I prefer a 30 caliber on a wolf, but they've been able to call in wolves the same pack again and again, because it's just, the crack's not as loud as like what like a 338 Ultra Mag or like a big muzzle brake. The big muzzle brake it just shakes the earth.
Oh yeah.
If my brother's ahead of me and he shoots, I feel it in the ground. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
So I feel an earthquake, and so do they. Sorry, I'll let you talk.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, I think it's not as caliber specific, or I guess in the case of like coyotes and stuff like that, people want something sort of 6mm and lower. It's probably the opposite with a wolf. You want to be 6mm and bigger.
Whatever
for
you feel
knockdown
comfortable
power,
shooting,
right?
like a mule deer or an elk with. That's kind of the caliber you want to stay around with wolves.
Yeah.
I've had wolves run off. I mean, they die, but I've had them run off with the 7 like a 7. I can't even say it, like a 7 mag, and
Yeah.
That big white male I shot with, it was a 300 short mag. I shot him, dropped him, and he got up and he ran quite a ways, and then he tipped over and died again. My brother Travis, he put a big hole in a alpha female I mean, it was center mass, but he did it, and I watched the video over and over again. He hits her hard with a 338 Ultramag. She runs
Wow.
off with it. And I'm like 99.9% chance that she died. Like, but she just ran in an alder patch, and yeah, we were just never able to recover. But I'm like, I mean, they can take a hit.
Yeah.
And I mean, you'll have the argument with trappers because like, oh, I kill mine all the time with a 22, and it's like, well, when you got them in a trap, you can perfectly place them right behind the skull cap so that you can preserve the hide, right? And you
Yeah,
can do that,
exactly.
but when you're hunting them, it's a different story. And especially at farther distance, you're losing velocity, and so there's a lot of variables. You want to knock them down. Wolves can, yeah, they can take some time to die. I mean, they can.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
so it's finding that balance, but I would stay between that. Like whatever you'd feel comfortable with, a bear, deer, and elk. Yeah, that's pretty good there.
Yeah, for sure. And then what about calls? Like, you don't see, it's not like elk where you walk into Cabela's and there's 50 options, for howling wolves. There's
No.
very few things out there. So what do you use? What do you recommend for guys?
So what I've done is I've helped. I don't know if you guys know Phelps Game Calls.
Yeah,
I reached out to
for
them because
sure.
I had the same concern too, where just the calls weren't out there, and so I reached out to them, and at that time I had a pretty good wolf count, and I'm like, would you guys be willing to work with me in trying to create a good wolf howler, And they agreed to it, and I didn't make any money off of it. I just kind of wanted to help them out,
Hmm.
and just get that out to the public. And so they'd send me samples. I would turn them down. I turned down a couple, and we finally got close enough to where I'm like, okay. And I started having some luck with it. Like these wolves have responded really well with it. The first time I ever used it, I had a wolf just come running right in at me. And it was actually really funny because it was downwind of me, unfortunately. And I'm like, gosh. And I'm looking through the scope, and he did a circle, and he's standing there behind me, kind of playing, I don't know, just like, I mean, I swear he was just messing with me because I was looking ahead where he was coming in, and he like did a loop, and then I looked behind me, and he's just standing right there, like, surprise, and then darted in the timber.
Gotcha.
But that was the first time ever using that call, so I would try that first, at least for locating wolves. Phelps Game Calls, they make a wolf howler, and I helped them
Okay.
design that. And then the one thing they did do just for a kickback and to help people out is using a promo code RUT10, RUT10. You save 10% off your calls. Any Phelps
Okay.
Game Calls, if that's elk or anything else. But that's one call I would use. Another thing for predator calls, I've really liked the one thing I try to do with wolves. And so going back to saying, like, how do you hunt wolves? Back to the main question, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I've learned this at a very young age from my brother, and it's learning how to adapt with animals, right? We always want to learn, oh, well, like what's the bugle? What's the perfect sounding bugle that makes an elk just say, I want to come into that? What's the perfect sweet cow call that just no bull can resist? What's the perfect grunt? And it isn't, right? Like every scenario is different. And the successful hunters are the ones who can cipher what scenario is taking place. And it's like, okay, well, this is a scenario, therefore I need to use this call. Or I shouldn't call at all in this scenario. I need to just move in. And so the first thing that helped me become a better wolf hunter is actually learning the behavior of wolves, and as soon as I started understanding the vocals of wolves, when I'd hear wolves howling, I knew what they were saying finally. Like I finally knew what they were doing. Were they afraid of me, or were they trying to show aggression toward me? Or are they just giving a good old, we're right here, like understanding their vocals was one of the first steps and understanding their behavior. The second thing was finding their weakness. Like what is the weakness of a wolf pack? I'll ask you guys that question. What do you think is the weakness of a wolf pack? Let's name a couple things off.
Curiosity, maybe. You know, they hear
Curiosity's a good
something.
one. What's another one?
Well, obviously, hunger, I guess. Maybe conditions, you know, prey conditions, what's around, what's not around.
Yeah.
I don't know, Blake, what do you think? A couple ideas? He's like, what? Oh, your mic's not working, bud. All right. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. His mic's not working. Let's start with that, Tom. I mean, there's a couple examples.
Yeah. So you talked about curiosity. I've killed a few wolves using that. Now, again, it goes back to them being the apex predator, right? So there's a couple scenarios where I'll give you one. And this one in particular, I was just out mule deer hunting, and, you know, I bumped a wolf, and he ran in a timber patch, kind of at the base of some cliffs. I'm like, gosh, he can't go far, you know, and I ran in the timber. And I got in the timber, and I was like, okay, the one thing, and I mean, I hoofed it. Like it was a long trek. I hoofed it in that timber. But at that point, I think most people are like, oh, that wolf's long gone. Well, I used this curiosity. I barked. That is one of the most familiar sounds that a wolf hears, right? With another wolf, a bark or a whimper. So I barked, and I see him pop out. And he popped out probably 15, 20 yards, and I shot him with the rifle, you know, dropped him.
Wow.
Use this curiosity against him, right? What was the other example? I'm trying to remember what the other example you gave me.
Oh, like food, hunger.
Food.
So, yeah.
So I try to adapt to the area. So some of the areas, so originally what was really helping us out is we were using a recording of a calf moose in distress. And man, that thing was just money. Like, we would get in close to a wolf pack, and we're like, well, this was a moose hub before the wolves moved in. So they obviously know that sound, you know?
Yeah, they've heard it.
We'd run that call, and it was just like, boom, you know, wolf would come in, smoke it, right? Same thing though. I mean, the problem with these electronic calls is they pick up on them really quick. Like, I feel like you only have a couple of chances maybe on the wolf pack, and after that, you're stuck with reeds, and you're stuck with mouth, you know, with your own mouth. But using their food, that's another one. What do you think is another weakness of a wolf pack? It can be a strength too. I mean, some strengths are also weaknesses.
I don't know if my mic's working, but if it is, what about like, do they dispute with other wolf packs, like territorial kind of stuff?
Yeah, territorial, right? So I used that to my advantage. He was a big alpha male. He was responsible. He killed 5 hounds, and I got word of it. My elk tag was filled, so I had time. So I reached out to the houndsmen. I asked them, where did that happen? Where did that take place? And they kind of sent me a location. Now, you know how far wolves move in a day. So it took me a day. It took me a day to find the pack. I had to move some country. I got them located. And so then I moved in, and I just sweet talked them. First, I just did a little sweet talk, you know, use their food source to their advantage, called them the pack. Unfortunately, they came downwind of me, and so they smelt me, took off. I had a cow elk reed in my mouth, and so rather than barking, I cow called, and I got one to stop and look back, and I shot that one. Then I went back. It took me 4 days, and I found the pack again. This time they were very aware of what I was, and so they were leaving. Thankfully, I had snow, so I got onto their snow. I tracked them, and I thought I was going to have a long-range shot. I was tracking them through some clear cuts. And it's probably the same rule in Canada, I'm not sure, but so in the US, it depends on the logging job too, but there's usually restrictions when you log close to a creek. And so typically timber's left next to the creek, depending on the classic creek. So I saw where the pack, I could see it. And again, it's being back and being observant, right? Rather than just going through the motions, I could see from a distance, I could see the pack, the tracks going into the timber, And on the other side of that timber seam, nothing. No tracks on the other side. I knew they were in that timber seam and bedding down for the day. I was very confident of it. Well, I had to think back. I'm like, okay, this is a very aggressive pack, right? And so I used wolf vocals to my advantage. That alpha male came out so hot, it was hair raising. And it's funny, I keep on saying under 10 yards, but I keep on saying it. It was under 10 yards. He popped out. I was right at tree line, and he just popped out, just about ran past me. And thankfully, I had a cow elk reed in my mouth. This tells you how little time I had. I had a GoPro on my head. I didn't even have time to push the on button on the GoPro on my head.
Wow.
And he just stopped in his tracks, just froze when I cow called. And I shot him, and I still remember the visual when he dropped. It was a fresh skiff of snow, and it was just powder. And I just remember the snow just doing this swirl when he just dropped in the brush. The snow just did that. But I had the muzzle brake, and the big girl was next to him, and she took off, just bolted. I just had no time to rack one in and shoot her. But I knocked him down. And so I used that to my advantage. No longer did the using their food source advantage was working, with my calls. So I had to start using wolf focus to get a second chance, and I was able to get him at least. So, and then I'll give one myself another weakness. It can be a strength, but it's also a weakness. Family. They're very family oriented. Like that's where I usually, how I get the adults is you start messing with the other members of the pack. That's typically how you get a chance on them. And I guess probably the best way to explain it, or I actually have a question for you guys. And it's just because I want to help you guys out, but I don't know what your seasons are like. Is it a year-round season?
I think wolves are no bag limit pretty much year-round for most of the province, if not all. We'll have to double check regulations, and if there's a mistake in that, we'll put it in the podcast. But yeah, I mean, we have a pretty liberal season.
Good. So this makes it easier for me. All right. So what I have learned is that most people think that in the winter is the best time to hunt wolves, and that can be true. Right now we're getting the month of February. This is the time where you get some of these adolescents, they break off the pack and they want to start their own. And I don't mean adolescents, I'm thinking like 3-year-old wolves.
Younger wolves. Yeah,
they're younger wolves. They start becoming a little bit of nuisance to the alpha male, start challenging them and stuff. They get kicked out. Anyways, so they're breaking off. They're looking for their own mate. So it's a good time of the year to catch those single ones that they're roaming. They're very vocal. They'll come in the house. They'll come in the wolf calls. But the one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and I've had this question asked to me, is what is my favorite time of the year to hunt wolves? Ask me.
It's one of my questions.
So
what is it?
It's August. I love the month of July and August in hunting wolves.
Oh, really?
They're not going to have the best coats, but man, you're going to get some vocals like you won't believe. And
really? Wow.
And what it really comes down to is, it's pros and cons in the spring. So when they give birth, for my experience with it, they don't like to talk as much, like the female and the alpha male, alpha female, because they're very vulnerable at that time. They have these very young pups. But I've heard it the opposite too, where I've had friends that just like, they're talking like nuts, but I think it's just the pups are yipping, and so that's where I'm going to get to. When those pups get old enough, they are just stupid vocal. Like they'll howl out a horn. They'll howl out a turkey gobble. Like they just talk to anything. And so when you start getting into like when they're like a little bit more a little bit more independent. They get more independent in the months of July and August, and they will give the location away from the pack. Now, I'm not there to just kill younger wolves. I'm there to kill adult wolves. But the young ones give out the location. That's what I love about it. Another thing why I love hunting wolves that time of the year is they don't travel near as much. We always think of the biggest struggle for wolf hunters is that wolves travel so much country. And they do. That's the problem with right now. Yes, they're very vocal this time of the year because it's kind of like the rut, right? But they travel so much. It can be really challenging to catch up to them. And then on top of that, you have snow. Try to catch up to a wolf pack on snowshoes. It's tough. If they don't have a kill, the stories are just unreal. And I don't, it's not just my stories, but my brother-in-law and sister that live in open country. Like a wolf can travel 30 miles in a day, easy, no sweat. And you can't keep up to a wolf on snowshoes unless they have a kill, unless they have a good route. But that time of the year when the pups are still young, I mean, like I said, they're more like adolescents at that point in the months of July, August. They're doing some hunting themselves, but their range is so small. It's a very small range, and they're very easy to locate. I don't just locate them, but even if the wind's not right, I can leave and come back the next day, and they still come to this. They go to the same spot. And that's crazy to hear about wolves. People don't think of that, but so many people, when they talk to me, they're thinking that they're going to be hunting wolves in January and February. And yes, that's a great time to kill wolves. But usually after a conversation, people change their tune and like, I need to start hunting wolves that time of the year, because that's honestly when I do my most damage. And the other thing I've learned about that too is if I can go into a spot where it's like one of my favorite elk hunting spots, and I can go in, I like to do all my check spots, right? Where I'm like, okay, well, this is an elk hunt spot I like to go to usually. And if I can go in there, and if there's a wolf pack in there, I mess with them before the rut. And then I typically don't have any issues with wolves afterwards. Like, even if you could just kill one out of the pack, that is like a big red flag for them, and they don't want to go back in that drainage. If you can just kill one out of that pack, I don't care if it's a pack of 8, they're out. They'll move out if they find danger. And you'll notice this, and it was almost within a week's period of time. So me and my friend, we killed a couple out of a pack, and the pack finally realized we're out. It almost was about a week later, and we started seeing elk show up. It was above tree line. We were seeing elk show up again. We were actually still wolf hunting, but we weren't finding wolves anymore. But all of a sudden the game just started showing back. And I mean, it's not like they were reproducing that fast. It's just that they were just moving back in the area. They're like finally realizing they can go back to their watering hole, back into the drainage that they feel comfortable in. I mean, it helps out in that way, but the thing is, I think what people get caught up in is elk season. They get caught up in elk season. They get caught up in these other hunting seasons. And so they just put wolf hunting aside. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Becomes more of an opportunity than a focused hunt, right? If they hear a wolf pack call, they might try and pick one off or whatever, right?
Right. Most wolf harvests are accidental, is what people say. But I have had I guess the archery wolves, the ones that I archeried, those were accidentals, but all the other wolves have all been on purpose. I was actively hunting wolves, and I killed them. Well, I guess the one mule deer hunting I won't say it was accidental, because one of the reasons why I was hunting deer in there in the first place is I saw wolf tracks in there, and I'm like, it's kind of stupid for me to mule deer hunt in there, but there's like the wolf pack is in there, and I heard him howling the day before. And so that was kind of one of the reasons why I went back in there, is like, I'll mule deer hunt, but in the chance I cut that wolf pack, and sure enough, I bumped that one and I killed it. So it wasn't, it was like, like I knew the wolves were there. But like I said, the majority of my wolves I've killed have all been, I actively pursued them.
You're pursuing them.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me throw a scenario for you, which is a very common one for for most hunters. Let's say you're hunting late September, moose or elk or whatever it is, and you're out in the backcountry, and all of a sudden you hear a pack of wolves howling. They start to pick up, whether they're on a kill or whatever. What would be the next step if you're a hunter? What would I do if I hear this pack howling and it's within, say, a mile of us? What kind of strategy?
My first thing is I would try to analyze it. I treat it like a herd bull elk, and maybe that's not the right thing to say, because I don't know, everybody doesn't know how to hunt a herd bull. But like, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it either, but one of the first instincts is for me is not to howl back. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to howl back, and they're just like, you're just wising up wolves, dude. Shut up. Go. And what I start doing is I start moving in, try to get in close. Honestly, if I don't have to howl, I'm not going to howl.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason for it.
Well, I mean, if they're making enough noise, you should be able to walk right up to them, right? Yeah. Or like get close enough to rifle range, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. Or even archery range. Get in the range. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid of them. They're just a dog that can take down a full-grown moose.
Yeah. There's always that.
But usually they come in with caution. So like, I don't have it like when I come in. I mean, besides, I've had some that come in fairly aggressive, but usually it's kind of like you said, it's a little bit more of a curiosity thing. I feel like wolves are not like a grizzly or a mountain lion where you're going to have a little bit more of an ambush type scenario. They're more of a curious type critter where I've had them come in straight, but a lot of times I have them circle me to check me out. People get afraid of that. I love the thrill of it, and I don't care if it's a bow or rifle rush. Huh?
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a bow
rush for sure, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't care if it's a bow or rifle in hand. Just treat it like you have a rifle in hand. Get in there close and just try to, if you're elk hunting, do a small little cow call. Learn how to use that calf. Try to do a little calf in distress. Calf in distress call.
It sounds logical to me, because like if I'll put it in a different frame. If you're a brand new elk hunter and you're learning how to bugle, but you're terrible, right? Like really bad, you can't even blow a power bugle properly, let's say, and you hear a bull bugling 500 yards away and you try to do a failed attempt at a bugle, there's a chance that bull might be, so far in the rut that he's dumb enough to come walking in to see if you are a satellite. But more often than not, he's going to be like, whatever, dude, take your cow call, your bull call, and leave, right? So I would think the wolves, being as smart as they are, they can probably pick out very quickly whether it's a human or a wolf, right? Like, I would think you'd have to be probably pretty good at howling. I don't know. And you tell me.
Not necessarily, but like it's back to creating a scenario for them. So like when you howl, I mean, they could either A, you're a person if they've had experience with people, or B, you're a threat. So either A, will come in and show maybe some aggression, or B, we're going to leave the country. We're going to run away because we don't want to fight today. Especially if they got younger adolescents, they don't want them getting in a bloodbath with another wolf. And so, anytime I do a howl, it's kind of the same thing when I'm trying to locate an elk. I don't start off aggressive. Like if I'm trying to locate a wolf, I'm trying to do a friendly, just letting one off and just making it as friendly as possible. No growling, no aggression, just a where are you howl. Same thing that I do with the herd bull. The first thing when I'm just trying to locate an elk, the first thing I'm trying to do is locate them. If they're talking like the wolves are talking, I don't need to talk to them. And I don't want to risk the fact of them running away because I don't know how strong their pack is. If their pack is strong, then maybe they'll come in. If their pack, maybe they're a little hesitant and they'll run the other way. You're risking that. Like your odds in calling them in with a food source is much higher. What risk is there with a dying or a calf elk in distress, besides the mother maybe trying to stomp one of the wolves, you know?
Sure.
But
yeah, it makes sense.
But like, I mean, imagine if alfalfa can talk. You know, imagine elk running into that.
Exactly. Yeah,
You know,
good point.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense if you
But
can
I
try
like to get in
to go
close
to them.
though. I like to get in the
Mm-hmm.
bubble. Like, I don't like to do
For
those
sure.
calls far off. I like to get in their
Mm-hmm.
bubble and get in close. If it's timbered, I like to get under, like within 100 yards. Maybe. Sometimes you can start bumping wolves, so you got to be careful. But you want to be in that range where it's like they're right there, and it's like you can let out the slightest cow call, and you know they can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to get in that bubble.
So I had a scenario a couple of years back. I was predator calling. It was winter time, so it was like January, February, and I was sitting in on the edge of a lake, frozen lake, lots of snow. It was cold, and I had my Fox Pro running, and I was basically focused on coyotes or lynx or whatever would come in, and had a wolf pop out across the lake at probably 1,200 yards. And I was, the wind was good, everything was fine. And that wolf came out and he got onto the edge of that lake and he knew something wasn't up. And so I was running Fox Pro over the remote, and I can't remember what sound it was. I think it might have been fawn in distress or something like that. It was not a jackrabbit or anything, but that wolf literally he would just walk back and forth 20 yards each direction, but he never left the other side of the lake and wouldn't come. And I've talked to other guys too that have run into the situation where you've got that curious wolf, but he knows he's out of reach. I mean, what kind of strategy would you have on a situation like that? Probably not much, right?
Because it was an open lake, right?
Yeah, he's not going to cross it.
No, so
At least he wouldn't in that case.
So with wolves, like for example, I'll give you an example somewhat similar, and it's one that people really struggle with. So you're howling, right? You get a wolf pack howling, and it's an aggressive wolf pack. They come right to tree line, and then they start just getting really aggressive, right? Barking, howling,
Mm-hmm.
showing some aggression. But the thing is they hardly, like, some might, I always hope that one might walk the tree line. A lot of times they don't like to show themselves because they know if they show how many members of the pack are actually there, then it shows vulnerability once again. So their goal is to, you hear that, you've probably heard the stories, oh, it sounded like there was 100 in the pack. Well, they're doing that on purpose. They're trying to be aggressive. They're trying to do like, we are a big pack, get out of our territory. And so they're trying to not show the number of wolves in the area. But the same thing too, when it comes to like predator calling, just sometimes wolves don't feel safe coming out in the open in mid daylight. They just don't. And so it goes both ways. So it could be that, or even that in itself. And so a lot of the times I've called them wolves have actually been in the timber. And so I have wolves that don't feel comfortable coming out in the opening. Then I join them in the timber. I join them in the thick stuff. Typically, when I call them out in an opening, like you said, like in an open meadow or something, they like to go right at the edge of the meadow and they start paralleling because their curiosity. They don't like to stick out like a sore thumb. Just like we preach about being skyline on a hillside so you don't get spotted. Wolves are a predator too, and they know hunting tactics just like a hunter does. They don't want to be skyline. They don't want to stick out in the opening. Anytime they're curious or they're observing something, they're not just going to run right out in the opening. Unless I've had it happen, and it's like when they're just desperate. I've had one just come barreling out in the opening, and because we were using an animal in distress, and it's like, food, I need food.
Dinner bell, yeah.
But in a lot of cases, I have to join them in the timber, believe it or not. I've been asked, what is your average shot? And it's under 30 yards. I've taken some long shots on them. My farthest shot really on a wolf has probably been 400 yards.
Okay.
But a lot of them are really close. And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of. They're afraid of that, joining them in the timber. in the thick stuff. Our brush, we got alders. We have that snow brush that gets up to our knees. And man, it's like when they come in, it's almost like an alligator coming in the water. They like put their eyes up just right above the brush and they just sneak right in on you. Sometimes it can be a little creepy. But I like to join them in the timber, and they feel a lot safer in the timber. And I don't know if it's comparable. This is just a theory of mine, but I'm almost thinking it's kind of like nighttime. There's places where they feel safe to check things out. Like a tent. Have you heard of this before, when wolves will howl around a tent and just harass people at camp? That happens a lot. And that's the other thing with wolves too, is typically, if you're camped in the area, they know you're there. I always am really careful if I'm wolf hunting, if I'm camping. I camp pretty far away from one of their rendezvous points, because like if they have any sense whatsoever that you're present, they may not show it during the daylight, but at nighttime they're going to investigate. They're going to scout out your camp, check things out. It's almost a guarantee. Like if they know you're in the area, that's when they feel safe, when the sun goes over the hill, right? That's when they'll
absolutely
check out your tent.
Yeah, I mean,
have them pee right, not necessarily right on the corner stake, but just like, on the stump that I saw nearby, so I can at least pitch the tent. And they'll circle the tent, they'll howl at night, and they'll leave the area for a bit until you leave. It goes back to their curiosity once again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you've ever done a backcountry hunt, let me rephrase that. If you're a backcountry hunter that goes out every year, sooner or later you're going to wake up in the morning, have a wolf track through your camp. It's going to happen. You see them. And I think everybody I know has encountered that for sure.
Well, it was really frustrating. I didn't have much time to hunt this past year, just because I had to I was traveling to hunt a lot, but I did have a little time. I went out, and it was toward the end of August. I went out and I did some howling in a spot, and it was kind of a rendezvous point in the past, but I did kill the big alpha the year prior. And so they're kind of weary of that area. But anyways, I howled there. I'm like, nothing's here. I'm like, I didn't even see a wolf track. Had a trail cam there was a trail cam pretty much right where I was standing when I howled to locate. Right there, a black wolf the next day sniffed right where I howled from. So
oh yeah.
He heard me in the midday, and then he checked it out at night. He kept his lips shut. But I'll tell you that wolf pack is tuned up. Even when I killed the alpha, I had to completely pretty much put my calls away and just move in on them. Like those are the most wised up wolf pack. That was the most wised up wolf pack I ever hunted. And I kind of miss the dumb ones, or the ones that just they don't have near as much hunting pressure. But it's getting to a point now where any wolf packs nearby, they know me. Unfortunately, they know my tricks.
I bet.
Dang it.
So Tom, let me ask you this one. Now, you made mention of it earlier about how they'll kick members out of the pack, or you end up with the solo. My daughter and I had an experience a few years back where we just randomly came across a solo wolf. It was a female, younger one, and just running through the timber, and we got lucky and were able to put a shot on it and kill her. But I've run into this scenario before too. I've got a wolf howling tube. I can't remember, it's like a cone. I can't remember the brand name of it. I just got it a couple winters ago, and I tried it out a couple times and had some success as far as communication goes. But on one occasion, I remember I stopped and I was glassing this one drainage that I wanted to kind of throw a call or two out, and I just did a simple howl. And I got a call, I got an answer back, and it was one wolf. And I just waited. It was quite a ways away. I'd say probably, maybe a mile or so. There was no wind. It was dead calm. So it was far away, definitely far away. And it wasn't something I could just whip in there because the snow was like 6 feet deep. I waited about 5 minutes and I howled again. And maybe 5 minutes after, I got another soft howl. Predator call there, or sorry, animal in distress would be the ticket there. What would you suggest on the scenario like that?
It was pretty far.
It was definitely only one wolf. Yeah, I'd say, a mile, maybe a bit less, but it was definitely could hear me. We were communicating. I think there was 2 or 3 exchanges of howls, but I didn't even know how to approach it. I just basically, the whole scenario kind of died off. I didn't know which way to go. So what would you do there?
If he's single and just way out there, it's kind of tough to run a prayer call, just because at least with the natural sounds, like a prayer call is really not as loud as what like an electronic call will do.
Yeah.
Can it work? It can. And I mean, I guess that with a single wolf, what do you got to lose? But I mean, in my scenario, I would have tried to work on howling. I would have tried to work him up and see what he would have done first. Just kind of like read what his howls were doing, seeing if he was going to get more aggressive, seeing if he was going to get farther away. And then if at any time, if I see the situation's going wrong, I just shut up and get quiet. And then I just try to listen and try to see what happens, and I'll start moving that direction. If I got time in the day, I'm like, okay, I might as well move over there. And kind of like a herd bull elk, sometimes he wants to know where his rivalry is, and he won't howl to see like, oh, I want to come in, where are you at? Sometimes he wants to know which direction do I need to run, or are you still there? Is the threat still in the area? So sometimes he'll still give a howl back to see where you're at, but then you just keep moving in on him, but there's a lot of different ways to approach that. But I think the first thing I would have done was just analyze the wolf, the howls, and see what he was doing, see was he planning to leave? Could I have worked him up? There's a chance you could have worked him up, but who knows, right? Like, it's just,
yeah. I mean,
it doesn't always go
was
perfect. I have a lot of scenarios too. I love to pretend that every scenario works perfect, but I can't tell you how many times I've scratched my head too, and I'm like, what happened? Why didn't he come in? It just happens to the best of us, right?
Well, and I think, if you compare it to elk hunting, I mean, elk hunting and elk calling, obviously, there's a bit of a language, right? Like we know, there's chuckle and there's growl and there's bugle, challenge, and all that. I guess apart from, your master class, is there any resources out there that you can think of or suggest guys to, I guess YouTube probably, to try to figure out that sort of a language, right? So you know what you're dealing with. Like you said, work them up.
Yeah.
Well, all I knew was how to do one basic howl, and that was it, right?
Well, it's helpful as I did go. I do have the WOLF Masterclass, and then we do a in-camp training. But yes, to learn the howls, what I did, which was actually helpful. Funny, these environmentalists didn't really know that they were doing. But, they have a lot of recordings of wolves and their howls and stuff, their warning howls. Some of it's experience, experience that I had to deal with multiple times and realize, oh, like when they do that howl, I know what they're doing. They're leaving. They're getting out of here,
Right.
And so there's actually I'm sure there's more than 2 different warning howls, but there's a warning howl that's just like there's danger, and there's kind of like a roundup warning howl where it's like there's danger, follow me, and that's usually the alpha male one, and I've heard that one where it's like, I know like the pack is typically split up, and you're starting to call members of the pack away from the main group. You'll call it 1 or 2 away. When that alpha male gives that particular howl, they all go back together. And so what I have done is I have gone onto some of those websites that these environmentalists have, and like learning some of the vocals there. You can hear some of them, and you can, it kind of helped at least with the foundation, but I also was a lot of experience too, where I was like, I had to start picking that apart. Like, oh yeah, I know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like that big white male I killed. It was not last August, but the August before. I was with my sister, and if I was an inexperienced hunter, I would have thought they were possibly coming in. But they were very vocal, and my sister was like, "Let's go in." I'm like, "No." She's like, "Why?" And I was like, "They're running away. They're getting away from us.
They're leaving. Yeah, they're leaving.
They're getting out." And so I set her up on their escape route, and then I came from the bottom, went back around, and then I tried to push them through. And I was like, well, if they cross past Tana, then she's going to have a shot. But I'm just going to charge in the pack I'm in a cedar grove, so it's really thick. And I'm just going to charge right in there and just raise havoc. And what I ended up doing was
just do a push. Yeah.
I got
okay.
And so I ended up splitting them up on accident, but it worked to my advantage. And again, I use like experiences with other species of animals like elk too, right? When you split up a herd and a big herd bull comes to round up the cows, right? You get a shot on one. I split up the group, and it ended up they split up on it was like an old gated road that was, some of it was brushed in, some of it wasn't, but it was not used at all. And so half the group went up the road and the other half of the wolves went down. It's just this old grassy road. So I was able to gather my sister back. I'm like, all right, they come back down here. Let's analyze what's going on here. We saw the big track go the opposite direction of the rest of the pack with a couple others. And so I'm like, well, let's head that direction, and see where they go. Well, we walk around the corner, and there he came. He was coming around the corner to round up the rest. And I shot him at about 70 yard shot right there. Big white male. Yeah, he was a big dog.
So, a question for you on the when you're calling them in. Let's say you've got maybe not the whole pack. But let's say you've got wolves coming into specifically to like a distress call or something like that, and you're set up, similar to like a coyote hunting situation where you've got them coming. Will they come in? Let's say you're set up in an opening, like a clearing. Are they coming straight in, or do you run into them circling you, flanking you? What do you see there? Because I know with coyotes are a strange one because depending where you are, they could come on a dead run or they could hang up and wait or whatever. What do you see there?
Yeah, openings, they can kind of do that too. Depends how comfortable they are in that area. Like if they're openings that they're using regularly, like a rendezvous point, then they'll just run right through it like they've been living in it. They like some of those openings, like those meadows, they've been gophering in there and stuff. And so they're very comfortable with coming right out. And places where they're not so comfortable, they prefer the timber. Like I said, I'm not afraid to set up in the timber. I'm not afraid to set up and say, I don't have many shooting lanes, but it's all right. Like I just got to make it work. It's okay to say that. Some people just want the perfect setup, right? But you're going to waste a lot of time trying to look for the perfect setup, because sometimes you're like, I'm just stuck with this setup. Really, the only setup that I'll back away from is the wind. The wind's bad. I'm not even going to attempt it because they'll win me. Their nose is stronger than anything out there. And so I can fool their eyes, but I can't fool their nose. And I can fool their ears too. I can fool their eyes and their ears, but I cannot fool their nose. And so I don't care how much scent lock you spray on you or bathe or, like there's,
it's a different smell. They're going to know
that actually work.
Yeah. It's the voodoo witchcraft kind of thing, right?
It is.
So now you typically hunt an area that you're very familiar with. Obviously, you've got your kind of home stomping grounds, like you said, your areas for elk and mule deer and whatnot. But for example, like when you shoot over to Montana, do you do like cold calls on different areas? And if so, what are you looking for? Obviously tracks and kills and stuff like that, but is there anything else that you're kind of looking for when you're trying to locate wolves? Like what are the key things for that?
So in the wintertime, I'm looking for tracks. Wintertime, 100% looking for tracks. And even if I'm, this is interesting. So if let's say I'm trying to prepare to hunt somewhere, let's say in August and September, it's hard to find tracks during that time of the year and to know if there's even a wolf pack running that territory. There was a time in our area where there was a pack running every single drainage, and we just don't have, like, those numbers have been knocked down. A combination of that, there's just not the food source, but also the trapping too. So, it could be a pack here can now cover close to 200 square miles. And so you can waste a lot of time being in the wrong places. So first thing I do this time of the year, I would find tracks, and not just any tracks. I'm looking for a pack. A single wolf is a nomad. He's not set to an area. This is like, chances are that's not his territory. He's just passing through. I ignore like a lot of single wolves just because I'm like, if they howl at me and I'll try calling them in, absolutely. I'll try calling in a single wolf. It's a wolf, right? One less wolf in the woods. But I'm not going to follow a single wolf track because he can go a long ways and he's on a mission. A pack, on the other hand, is different. A pack has to be organized to keep themselves together. So they have routes. They have rendezvous points. They have a place that there's going to be a den site in the spring. They can hold up to, usually on average, a pack holds to 3 generations in a pack. And so they're going to continue to breed. And so it's just finding those routes that they take and patterning them. But you have to realize, like, people have to realize, when I say you, I mean everybody. You can't just, like, wolves are not stupid. You shut off the snowmobile and howl. What type of message are you giving those wolves? I heard, like, like, the snowmobile still up in a wolf howl. Like, they can put those pieces together.
Yeah.
Usually what I like to do is I like to stop. Like, if I know I'm gonna crest over into the next basin or the next draw, I'll park the snowmobile, walk around the corner, howl, nothing, back in. Now in the summertime, let's say I didn't have time to scout in the wintertime, I'm really looking at scat. And that doesn't seem effective, but you'd be surprised. So that those wolves where I shot before, I was telling you I killed 4 wolves with a suppressor. When I went in there with no idea where they were at. But I knew there was a pack in there somewhere. And it was all simply, I went based on one camper said, I was just kind of walking around, and I think I was just getting some parts for my house. I was building my house at the time. And the guy's like, oh yeah, I saw some wolf scat on a trail. And it's like, how much is that really going to help me, right? But I was like, well, I got this new suppressor. Let me check this out. So I went up the mountain, and, I hiked a few miles, and I saw one pile of scat. Doesn't really tell me a whole lot. It's like, okay, there is a wolf here, or there was a wolf here. But then I hit this section of the mountain where, I kid you not, less than 100 yards, I saw 19 piles of wolf scat.
There you go. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there was no more wolf scat for another mile. I was like, all right, well, we found a crossing point that they are living here. And so then I looked at the maps and I started picking apart, okay, where have I not tried calling yet? Took me 2 days. In 2 days, I found the pack there. I got them howling. I was like, there you are. And they ended up being about 4.5 miles from where that crossing was, right there. But when you looked at it, as soon as I looked at it, I'm like, oh, it makes more sense too. It was very roadless too, like where there wasn't a lot of people access. And then I just played with the wind and went in there, and then I did a fawn and distress and called them in.
Right.
With that scenario, but again, every scenario is different. But that's what I.
So when you're doing that, and you're working that area, and you're hiking those trails, and you're doing your howls similar to a locator call for bulls, basically, right? So it sounds a lot like trying to find bull elk, right? You're moving around. In the case of the howling, so walk us through how does that work? Do you just let off 1 or 2 howls, wait? Like, how long do you wait between howls, and when do you give up on a spot?
That's a great question. I think, again, it goes with experience, because there's some areas where I know there's a wolf that can hear me. And I'm like, sometimes I'll howl and I'll listen. I feel like by the time I pretty much give myself enough time I've slowly put the call back in my pack. By the time I do that, if I don't hear anything, okay, I'll do a couple. But there's some places where I'm just like, that's an ideal spot for a wolf pack. I don't know why, but it just feels like that's a spot for a wolf pack to be. And I'll howl, and nothing. And I'm like, I swear there's got to be a wolf pack there. Like, I'm like, I've checked everywhere else. I've seen wolf scat. They got to be there. And I'll like, okay, I'll come back in the evening, like where, a little more prime time, and see if I can get him talking. Go back in the same spot, howl, whole pack lights up. Just like, I knew it. I knew you were there. I knew it. It's funny how that works, but
yeah, right.
but it's like some wolves, like, are vocal as all get out. They'll talk. I mean, no different than an elk, but sometimes they just they just won't talk. And you want to
Sure.
make sure you're doing the right howl too. You don't want to be accidentally doing warning howls, or if you don't necessarily know the language, you can mess them up too. But going back to what you were saying before too, wolves can make some pretty stupid sounds themselves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, some people are like, oh, that guy's really not good at wolf howling. I'm like, well, I've heard wolves make some worse. It's like an elk too, right? We heard elk make some pretty, like, almost sounds like something's dying, like,
Yeah.
you're like, what was that? And it was a bull elk, and same with wolves. I've heard what was it? It was a wolf. It was about that time I killed that big white one, and then I went in a week later, and there was one wolf. I mean, it was just making the most horrendous sound. It had to be a young one. Like, usually the young ones are still playing with their voice, and it was just like, just like hitting a whole bunch of notes. And
Sure.
it's just like, so that wolves, they can make some pretty stupid sounds themselves. So,
Yeah.
but
And
you
again,
can,
like you said, it's experience, right? You just got to get out there and start talking to them, and you figure it out.
yeah, it's putting in the time. But I definitely want to tell people to just make sure to, like, not waste your time on the wrong time of the year. Like, I think that's where people make the mistake. Same thing with elk hunting. People get out like early September, like all like season opens, they all get out like all with full piss and vinegar, and they try to get an elk bugling. It's not hot yet. People get burnt out, like opening week, Labor Day, everybody's in the woods hunting. All of a sudden, like, I have the woods to myself, and the elk are actually talking now. It's like, same with mule deer season. It's so funny. People, like, get burnt out so fast. Mule deer season opens. They all go out in the woods. They get burnt out, stop, and I'm like the only boot tracks back there, and I get a nice muley buck, and the rut's going well. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with wolves. People, they just waste their time at the wrong time of the year. And I feel like a lot of people jumped into wolf hunting in December. That's a horrible time of the year to wolf hunt. I don't know. Like, it's just not a good time to hunt to me. I mean, if you have a bait site, maybe, but like, there's no, like, that's the time they're traveling the most. Those younger adolescents, they're a lot bigger now, and they are moving some country. And now you got animals moving to their wintering ranges, so now you got wolves having to reestablish their routes and stuff. Like, there's just so many changes in December. Trapping's good for that, but I mean, that's not the time of the year me as a hunter would hunt. Right now is good. I'd go right now. I just got other things to do right now.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
I
Well,
give
as
up.
you can see, yeah, it doesn't take long for time to click by on this podcast. We're over an hour and a half already.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I got to, we got a couple more things I want to hit here. Just quickly, what is there any tips you can offer hunters on the fur handling side of things, and post shot? How do you handle your kills with a wolf? Like, what do you say?
If you're wanting to continue to hunt that wolf pack the whole wolf out,
Okay.
because right there you're showing, hey, this is a dangerous spot. But I've noticed that even with just a little bit of blood, like, if you get rid of the wolf, like, it doesn't mean that the wolf is dead. And so I've had them still hang around the area,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would get rid of the wolf, or just take the whole thing out. Don't get it out yet. Get him. Yeah, you're just gonna have to pack the whole thing out.
Okay.
If you are out in the field, unfortunately, you're just like, man, I'm way the freak back here. And sometimes I just like, I got to just get it out here. I'll just hang it from the hind legs and I'll tube it. If it's a good hide, if it's a crud hide, I'll just, we're required to pack the hide out. So I mean, typically I won't do great on a hide that I know is not going to be much value. But it's still the requirement. And I'll still pack the skull and stuff. I don't know. I mean, at the same time too, I'm like weird about shooting stuff and leaving it like too. Obviously I'll never eat wolf meat, but I'm like, I still got to pack something out. And I don't have the grudge like I used to on wolves. I used to just have like a hate, like a really bad hate toward them. And I just wished ill on wolves. And now I'm just like, they're just an animal, just doing what they're doing to survive. So I have to remind myself that too sometimes. It's easier to do that when there's not many anymore. Like we used to have a lot, and it was really frustrating. And I mean, then that hate builds up. But now that we don't have as many, I feel like, okay, we're kind of leveled out now. Like and I get it, like I'm not out to, like I'm not you hear guys say, oh, shoot it in the guts, let it suffer. I'm like, just I like dead wolves. I like to confirm the death. Like, all right, that's a dead wolf.
Exactly.
Clean kill. Sorry, did I get off topic?
No, not at all. No. So one of the things we like to do, and you've been very generous with stories so far, but we usually like to ask our guests, depending on the species, what's, as far as experience goes, what's your craziest wolf encounter?
I've told you a lot of them.
You told us a few, yeah. So maybe that might not be irrelevant. We could flip over to your brother and sister's encounter with the bear last year. That's a whole other podcast, but
that is a whole other.
I guess.
Podcast.
Well, let's try another one. What's the largest pack? As far as the number goes that you've encountered?
Okay, yeah. So this is a story. I know you're probably tired of them, but
no, not at all.
Okay. So this is a pack never been messed with, and a friend of mine we're like, let's check this pack out. So we went in, we howled, located them, and to kind of just paint a picture in your head, so it's kind of really pretty in there where you'll have the high elevation above tree line, but in these flats it's kind of moosey, marshy, these meadows, right? And so we located the wolves, got them howling in there, but we just, because there was just a lot of there was a hilly section, we couldn't really tell exactly the location. We moved in there, and as we were howling to locate them, they were also howling to locate us. So we kind of met in the middle like this, where we went out in the meadow and came out in the meadow like, oh, there's a meadow here, and you could see the wolf trails in the meadow. Well, at the same time, wolves came out in the meadow and they were coming to us. And so we set up, we had a tag team that first one. There was a big male, and he stopped, and I shot. I tripped him pretty much. It was like a free hand, bad idea. I drank caffeine before the hunt, and I was like, oh, I got this. It's an easy free hand. Pull up, and I'm like, I see my crosshairs doing this. I'm like, oh no, not good. And I shoot. Yeah. My friend backed me up, and he shot, he knocked it down, then it got back up, and then I shot it. So it was a tag team effort. We killed that one. And then pack scattered. We went in there, and we hit another section of the meadow. And then we were like, okay, well, we haven't called them in with the prayer call just yet. We let the dust settle as we waited for about an hour, actually, after that scenario. Mm-hmm. And there was a couple wolves that ran off, but they didn't quite understand what just happened, right? They're like, alarmed, they scattered. And then this is another scenario I'll notice too, is like when wolves howl, they're like, okay, we're missing a member, and so they'll howl to try to call that member back. And so we kind of just moved in, and well, rather than trying to howl back, I was like, okay, well, we haven't tried paracalling yet. So we did paracall, and a big female ran out with another wolf, and I shot the female, and then the other one ran back in the timber. And then the whole pack was just lit up. The following day, I had some obligations, so I couldn't go. My friend went without me, and he called the entire pack again with another friend, and they ended up missing a bunch of wolves, and it was the same pack. And so I asked them afterwards, I was like, well, how many wolves do you think were there? And they said they were looking at roughly seven, and, between 6 and 7, coming in at them. And there was another, little over a dozen howling behind them. And so I was like, that was probably one of the biggest packs I ever worked on, was that one there. And our local trapper that winter, I mean, he went in there and he hooked, I think, 19
Really? Wow.
out of that area. Yeah. So he had and it may have been split between another area too, but he caught a lot out of that group. It was a big pack. And now I'd say there's probably about, if I was up there right now on the snowmobile, I think I could probably find about 3 wolf tracks up there. There's not many.
Really?
Yeah. But they're moving a lot of country. They're not staying in one spot. They don't feel safe staying in one spot with the amount of trapping pressure that's going on, which is good. It's keeping them on edge.
Yeah. keep them in balance, right? That's the hope,
Exactly.
right? That's what you want.
Yeah.
Just on that note, last night I watched a video on YouTube. You've probably seen Billy Mole's hunting adventures.
I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, so he just released a video, and he's moose hunting. He's a guide, and he's moose hunting with 2 clients, and they come across a pack of wolves. There's about a dozen, and they managed to call them in on camera, all 12, to within 30, 40 yards. And it was interesting because you could tell these wolves had not been hunted. They called them in with a moose call, with a cow call, and they came basically just like you said, just sort of loping along, jogging, wagging their tails, looking at each other. And then they were sort of spread out, 4 or 5 abreast, rolling over the hill. And they were on the top of the hill, open country. And the 2 clients were just, of course, very, very blown away by this whole situation. So there was some interesting shooting went on, but they managed to kill 2 and fire shots at 4 or 5 as they were running. But those wolves, even after the first shot, a couple of the ones that were really close, they would only run maybe 15, 20 yards and then turn around. I was like, what the heck's going on? You could tell just based on, some of the things you've indicated, they had not seen humans before. There's no way, or at least they had not been shot at. But you should check that video. It's Billy Moles, and he's modern day mountain man, I think is what he has his brand at. But pretty cool stuff. So we're just about out of time, Tom. So let's what are your hunt plans for this year? You guys got anything big yourself personally? What do you got lined up?
Being that I didn't have as much time as I'd like to for wolves in 2023, I definitely made it a priority to take time off specifically for wolves this year. Just because I was traveling a lot this year, hunting other things. We drew Colorado and stuff, so I was hunting other states and Wyoming, and so that's on the list. But besides that, honestly, I put in for a bunch of tags. I have a lot of points. And then I'm most likely going back to Alaska too. But this is kind of a very interesting time in all of our lives. Adam and Tana just they're fostering another kid. Right now they've adopted 5 kids, and then they're fostering another one, a very young one, and so that might make it challenging on our hunting plans in Alaska this year. Who knows? We'll see. They always find a way to find a nanny. They somehow wrap some nanny into it. and so there's that. But no, there's a lot of really good country I want to pursue. I'm spending more time, like I said, in Montana, where I did an actual, a very small event in Montana the other day. Got a bunch of wolf hunters together and just trying to help them out. And they were talking the same thing. None of them knew how to hunt wolves, but they're just man, their packs are big and they're just never been hunted. They're howling every single day. And it's just man, it's making me, it's making me antsy. So, and Montana's not far from my house. It's just the restrictions in trapping are so much more strict, which is why there's so many over there.
Right.
And so, but yeah, we in Idaho, we are actually pretty fortunate for our trapping rules. We've got some good people. We have the Foundation for Wildlife Management. They've been a big part. passing laws and regulations that help us manage this apex predator. So
Right on.
it really helped us out. But now we're at a point where I'm like, okay, I better go to Montana and see what I can do there. So
Yeah, for sure. Oh, you got to find some new country, and that's always fun, right?
yeah, definitely.
All right. So where do our guests find more info about some of your upcoming stuff? Is there a website or link, or how do we track you guys down?
So let's see. Would I leave it in the comment section or how would I do that?
Well, we can. I mean, if you want, we can. I think Blake's got some of the links. I've got a note going with Blake, but obviously Instagram, Stuck in the Rut, is where we could start, and they could reach out there. And
we have a
what we'll
couple
do is we'll
options.
get you. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, so I was saying that we have a couple options. There's the one that you showed there, the WOLF Hunting Masterclass, and it's very thorough about wolf hunting. I do e-scouting and everything, everything under the sun about wolves and their behavior, and I even show some examples on some of the howls that wolves do. And then we do a summer camp where some people just want an in-person event. And I honestly, when I was talking to some other hunters that are involved in this event as well, they hunt different country than I do. They hunt open country for wolves. So I was like, we teamed up with them. They're also too on the Wolf Masterclass, but also in the in-person class as well, where we get two different types. Like their hunting techniques are different than mine, but they're also very effective. So it's like really nice to have two different methods of wolf hunting. But what's funny though too is because they've learned their methods and I've learned mine, and a lot of our methods are actually similar, and we just kind of picked them up on our own. So I think that's funny how that works. But anyways, so we have that wolf camp this summer. It's the Western Wolf Academy. It'll be in July. I'll send you some stuff there for people to contact. Right now, all we really have is an email. We're just getting people on the list for the summer. We're working on a website, but this is our second year of doing it. And the first year we're like, let's try it out, see how it works. And then it was very much a success. So we're going to do a second year of it. Awesome. Same thing though. Like if people can't make it, you always have the online option.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome, Tom. I knew it would be. We got the right guy on to talk about wolves, and
thanks.
On behalf of this.
Sorry for talking your ear off. I tend to do that sometimes.
Oh no, hey,
no. The stories were incredible. It was really cool. That was awesome.
Thank you. I love
very
talking
good.
about wolf hunting. It's fun.
Right on. All right, man. Well, thank you very much, Tom. We appreciate it, and we're gonna put a pin in this episode, and we'll have it up here in the next few days.
All right. Thank you.